We are biased for Africa. We believe that we need to innovate for Africa.
Hi everyone, I'm Sabine Van der Linden. I run Venture Labs under the name of Alchemy Crew.
My name is Tunji Andrews, founder and CEO at Awaba.
You need to have products that are simple enough that someone that's never bought insurance before can understand them in a 2-minute phone call.
2014, Nigeria's first InsurTech platform was formed, MyCoverGenius.
I believe there's a huge opportunity to reshape the narrative of insurance.
This is Arun Iyer, founder and CEO of Alpha Direct.
Dr. Network, founder and CEO of Willa.
My name is Benton. I'm the founder and CEO of MTech.
This is Glo, the CTO at Pineapple.
This is Herman from Austria, Managing Director of Insurance.
So join us for the new season of InsurTech Business Series Podcast. Fresh conversations on InsurTech in Africa. Subscribe now.
Today, we're excited to share a bonus episode from the recent IBS Insurance Innovation Roundtable. With open banking going live in Nigeria this year and the release of NAICOM's InsurTech guideline, the timing couldn't be more relevant. This special session was moderated by Suzanna Prophecy Daniel, Head of Marketing Communications at MyCoverGenius, and featured 2 brilliant voices, Yinka Edu, partner at Udoma and Belo-Osagie, and Unyime Tommy, managing partner of Assuredly. Together, they unpacked what open banking really means, how it can transform customer experience, and, most importantly, the opportunities it creates for insurance in Nigeria. It's a thought-provoking fireside chat that connects policy, technology, and innovation in ways that can shape the future of our industry. Let's dive right in.
All right, thank you so much. So I think my next question is to you, Unyime, and it's going to be on how open banking will work in practice. So we've talked about, the importance, we know why we're here now, but in practice, what is that going to really look like?
Okay, I don't know. Okay, you mentioned that 20 years ago the banking ecosystem was kind of very, not as advanced as it is today. Yeah. So now I'm looking at that from that perspective. You would note that there was a time on Pay with Pay Stack where you would see link your bank, but when you go on there, you don't see all the banks. So there are just specific banks that were there. So if your bank was not on that list, you would not be able to complete your transaction using that particular payment method rather. So basically what open banking is doing, or is in practice is going to mean, is that you would not need to, like a paystack as an institution, would not need to go to all the individual banks to connect to the bank to be able to carry out that kind of payment process. Rather, through the means of the open API, as it were, because everybody is speaking the same language, basically all they just need to do is plug into the open banking framework, and then everybody, regardless of the bank you're interacting with, right, you are able to send in money. So in practice now, that means that even you as an InsurTech, for instance, you don't now need to go to GT and say, I need this customer details, and then you have to start a full-blown integration with that GT. Then when you're done with GT, you now have to go to Access, and then basically bank by bank. All you just need is that you have the framework, the structure, basically speaking one language across all the banks. You can retrieve customers' details from multiple banks, from multiple customers all at once without having to do the overhaul, what I call it, the overhead that involves with building that infrastructure if there was no open banking.
All right, thank you. So basically, we're going to see a simplification of that whole process. So, yeah, thanks a lot, Unyime. My next question would be for you, Yinka, and it's going to be on the new guidelines, right? So we know that this guideline, it signals a readiness. It signals that Nigeria is ready for a more connected ecosystem. So what I want us to talk about, what does the release of CBN's guidance, the new signal that it's sending, and how we can be prepared for it. Both from a legal perspective now, from a legal standpoint, how can we be prepared for this guideline? Yeah.
Okay, so the process, the guidelines have been in existence for a couple of years, as has the framework. But CBN has now finally said, okay, we're going ahead. The process is essentially, it's a tiered system in relation to how you can get access to information. They're the unregulated entities, the unregulated entities, let me put it like that, who are described as tier 0, and those ones have access to sort of limited types of information. Then there's tier 1, which is, you get access to a lot more. Those are the people in the sandbox, etc. Then you have PSPs, and then tier 4, you have banks, full banks. PSPs and other financial institutions. So the reason why I mentioned that in particular is, where exactly do the insurance companies fit in? Do you fit in as tier 0, i.e. not regulated? You know what? You're not regulated by CBN, because really CBN is looking at who it regulates. Or do you fit in as the tier 2 in relation to as other financial institutions? So even BOFIA recognizes that insurance institutions are other financial institutions. CBN has not been entirely clear on where that fits in. But I think that the interesting thing is, either way, I think there are opportunities. Even if it's only a tier 0 access that insurance companies have, I still think there's a lot of opportunities there. So that's something that will be interesting. Then there's a lot that CBN has done in relation to how you access it. If you are not a full bank, you have to be recognized by, you have to have a risk assessment by at least 2 banks that look at it. And these are some of the precautions they've put in place to make sure that, to try to sanitize the whole process, because you don't want just anybody coming into the system, just anybody having access to information. There's a register. So people have to be registered if they're operating within the system. So there's a whole process that people have to go through. I think it's interesting. I mean, when I read it, I think, oh, well, this is quite detailed. And then you see what they're doing in other jurisdictions, and, the requirement is even higher. But I think it's very interesting. We're going to see how people, data protection, the types of protections that you have to have in place in order to operate in that system. There's just so much, I think, but it's important if we're going to be sort of what's the word? Interoperability. If you're going to have that, then it's very important that everybody's operating at a particular standard, because really you're only as good as your weakest link, if you see what I mean. And so if you're going to be providing information to a participant that is weak, then obviously that is risking your own client's information. So these standards are standards that are to be met. There's quite a process to go into it, but I think everybody should really go into it the positive attitude. We always complain. Why are they making this thing difficult? Why is all of that? But honestly, the risk is can be significant, and so I think we need to go into it really operating at the highest possible standard in order to operate.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to come to you, Unyime. We've seen how open banking transform payments, right? If that could happen for the payment sector, it tells us that it can also happen at that scale or at that level for other industries or for other parts of the ecosystem. So if open banking could unlock innovation like that in one part of our ecosystem, how would it unlock innovation in product design, customer experience, and service delivery across insurance? Right? Why should we care? Why is this something that should matter for us right now?
I'll come from KYC first. So one of the most regulated space we know today is the bank. Yeah. And for you to have a running bank account, an active one, it means that you have been KYC'd, right, from tier to tier, right? So it means that for an insurance company now, that bottleneck first off is taken away, because you know who you're talking to, you know your customer. So that's one. Then you move into the transactions that those customers carry on. So you can tell about their income, their debts, and then you can more or less, build tailored solutions around their use cases, right? So so for the person in the village who necessarily does not have that amount of history, you would also, have significant information for them to build something that is limited to their own ecosystem. I think someone said something like, if you're doing like the travel insurance, for instance, where you're buying a ticket and then you're seeing an option to immediately, buy insurance, right? You make a purchase of a car, imagine a laptop scenario where as you were buying the laptop, it was already an option there for you to pick it up because it has seen, this item is because it's embedded into the user experience. So with that being available, the user experience would be more or less improved because now the insurance companies are not running blind. They would have more context to their customers. And this information is not just today's information, right? Over the last decade, you have like tons of information of people's transactions, even for most people. People had transactions and had accounts from teenagehood, so you can even tell their entire life history. And also, it's also easy to also track your users on the other hand, right? When it comes to claims as well, you can more or less follow through that transaction. Because I think one thing with insurance is, as much as we talk about the part of even buying the insurance, the claim part as well is also one part that is also not that clear to most people, or even for the insurance companies, you want to be sure that they are using the money for the right reasons. So it's something that with that amount of visibility and transparency, you'll be able to build tailored products that are meeting the customers where they are, not just assumptive product that, okay, because it's regulated, we should just give them this.
We're at a pivotal moment in the Nigerian insurance industry, and the role of innovation and collaboration cannot be denied. The 6-week NIA Innovation Lab is designed to connect innovators with insurers to solve real industry challenges. This year, we're zeroing in on 3 themes. 2, industry-wide challenges, electronic KYC, and a claims exchange starting with motor insurance. The third is a wildcard for fresh, disruptive, and interesting ideas. If you are an innovator with a valuable solution, this is your chance to collaborate with us, with the industry. Apply today at nigeriainsurers.org/innovation lab. Let's transform insurance in Nigeria together.
Thank you so much. So my next question is for you, Yinka. We've talked about the opportunities a lot, right? We know, okay, this is possible, but we want to ground it in reality a bit, where we still have a very low adoption rate. I think the penetration is like 1% right now, or even less than that in Nigeria. So the person on the street is not thinking, I want to insure my car. They don't even have a car. Or I want to buy healthcare. They don't have access to those type of options. So, but how can open banking make this more inclusive? I think financial inclusion. How can open banking bring financial inclusion? Because right now it's very low.
I think that it's a good point that you've made. I think that we talk about financial literacy, and there's very little financial literacy. People don't even understand interest, that they learn interest on money, etc. And then you're talking about them understanding the importance of insuring different aspects of their sort of lives. It's very difficult for you to get that point. And the saddest thing is that the people that understand it least are the people that probably need it most, the people that are most exposed. So I think that what excites me the most, and somebody mumbled it when I was over there, really is the embedded insurance. Is embedding it. When I say embedded, I mean embedding it such that not even that they have the option to take off their 1,000 naira. It's in there. It's embedded. It's in there. And I've heard a few use cases that I've heard outside of Nigeria, but in South Africa, for example, I've heard that, for example, when you there's an option. I don't know if it's widespread, if it was an idea, but when you put data on your phone, it automatically insures that phone for the period of the data. So if you put a month's worth of data, it insures your phone for that period. And that makes sense. Why, you don't want to, the data is of no use to you unless you have the phone, frankly. So, it makes sense to do that. So things like that, I think, are really, really important ways of looking at how do we actually sort of embed, how do we add that value. We've seen or heard about how, Uber drivers or whatever who will be earning not on a regular basis, they insure as they drive. You insure per mile. So I just think that there's a lot of creativity that needs to kind of go into this. I think knowing and understanding the customers better certainly is the only answer, because you create something and it may not work. So until you actually have the information, you're not going to be able to create the ideal product. And I think that is where this open banking really shines, because you can really get to understand customers, understand what their needs are, understand how they spend money, understand the losses they make. I mean, the one that, for me, I just don't even understand how we can do buy now, pay later without insurance. You literally can't. If I buy a phone today and somebody steals it for me tomorrow, I'm not paying later. I'm just not paying later, frankly. So, it has to be embedded. I think that's where, and once we're working more collaboratively with the banks, then some of these other products and the PSPs, once all these other products can be built off the back of that. But I honestly think embedding is the answer. They don't even know that they're paying for it. It's just when they now know that they can claim, that is when you now get the trust. That is when you now build the sort of interest. People right now, they don't know. They're thinking, just as you said about your daughters, as far as they're concerned, they're throwing money away.
Right. Thank you so much. I think I want to go touch on a couple of things you said when you answered the question, especially when you talked about embedding it into, just making it something that. But do you think that is going to solve the trust issue that we have? That if you just make it embedded, that they don't have to think about, would that really solve the trust issue? Because that's still a barrier.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is that if, for example, somebody, let's say, let me do buy now, pay later, because that one is an obvious one, because you still have an interaction with the person that you bought from. If I buy a phone today and next week it's stolen, and I go back to the people and say, this phone that I'm supposed to be paying for over the next month has been stolen. And they say, okay, don't worry, there was insurance in it, it's embedded, it's covered, etc. Then you know that, okay, this insurance thing, it makes sense. If not, you're never going to understand. It's just like I'm throwing money away. People don't even know to go back to claim. That's the other thing. They won't even know to go back to claim. That's why I use that one as an example, because that one, somebody's going to be chasing you. So I just think that it's building that trust. It's building that understanding. It's difficult, but at the same time, a lot of people are living existentially, really. And so they need this. They actually need this. If your job is linked to the phone, for example, and that phone is lost, then literally, the impact on your life is huge. So I think that it's very important. You people, you're on the side of God. You people are important work that you're doing, and I just think that it's the buy-in that's the difficulty.
Thank you so much. So Yinka, I'm going to come to you now. With richer data flows, with more information, financial institutions are going to be able to build more personalized solutions, and it's going to be more tailored. Do you think that's going to be the real unlock when it comes to open banking, or is distribution really going to be where we're now going to face when it comes to driving adoption for that?
So I would say that I think with open banking, you mentioned trust. The trust is actually a two-way straight side. So I can also come and tell you that the phone got stolen and it's actually not stolen. So there's also that part you have to deal with, which is the insurance company have to trust the customer and vice versa. So it's a two-way street, right? So in looking at it from that aspect, it now means that because I know I have access to your financial records, and there is a collaboration between the banks and the insurance company right now, it means that, okay, the insurance company can more or less put a lien on your account, for instance, when you default, or maybe they realize at the end of the day, because when there's no accountability in the system as well, you also, there are room for, lies and theft and all that. So with that visibility of transparency, and both, not just, okay, you have the APIs, yes, you have the access to the record, yes, but there's also more consequences built on top of that, right? It will be more easier because I don't think distribution is a problem in Nigeria, to be honest. Almost every, to an extent, I think the telephone coverage or the digital phone coverage in Nigeria is, to an extent, penetrable to everywhere. Even if the people you have farmers today who actually, even down to the USSD, at least, even if you don't have a digital phone, you have a feature phone which can still, do the same, or rather, we can still pass information to them on that note, right? So if you have that embedded in the scenario, in that scenario whereby they know that, okay, I would have access to this. These are the consequences to this. You're right. The bank is in collaboration with the insurance company, whereby, when it comes to even ease of payment, because I think another thing that is also a friction is if I have to remember to go and pay for my insurance, I don't think I will pay for it. But if I'm worried, I maybe like a direct debit on my account where once it's due, my premium is debited, right? That also eases the ability to just keep doing it. And also having that access to that information as well also eases the entire, the workflow or the ecosystem and the claim, because you would know your customer more, and then you would also ensure that their claim process, especially for someone that's, you've been consistently paying your premium and this is your first time for raising. Why wouldn't I want to, give you your claim amount? Yeah.
Thank you so much. Okay.
No, I just wanted to follow up on what you were saying about it being a two-way street, and I think that's exactly it. If, for example, the person says they've lost their phone, but you see they've continued to put data on that line, etc., you have access to that. You know what I mean? So it's also going to help from the outside perspective that you really can see. It's going to help with fraud. Things like that. You're also going to be able to tell whether people have really, what they're doing, whether they're making a claim and said, I had an accident and it cost me X amount to fix my car. Did they really pay X amount? All of those sorts of things. It's going to create a lot more transparency, I think, in the system.
Thank you. I think this is breaking it down more into bits and making it more relatable. This is how it's going to show up in actual practice. And I think you mentioned something about South Africa earlier on. I also seen open banking in insurance open up more specific innovation in places like the UK, Brazil. This question is going to be for you and Unyime. I want to say, where do you see the first real wins showing up in Nigeria? Because part of what we talked about early on in this conversation was that we are not just a low trust economy, we're very also low income. So that's already double-edged. So where do we see the real first wins? Those low-hanging, because there are insurers and insurtechs here that want to know, where do we focus on? So I'm going to show this to you. I'm also going to show this to Unyime. So it's going to be
no problem. But the interesting thing is I was speaking to this company, Pineapple, in South Africa recently, and it was really interesting hearing what they said. I thought that apparently car insurance is not compulsory in South Africa. I never knew that. One, it's not compulsory, and then you're not allowed to charge them a year in advance. So it's a monthly access thing. So, which is interesting, because when we're talking about making things compulsory, it just goes to show that that's not necessarily the solution, if you see what I mean. Because even though they don't have, they also think they have very low insurance penetration. I mean, they have not seen low. They have not seen low. They think they have low, but I'm saying that, they don't have that, but they're breaking down. So I think they break down a lot more. So saying, for example, and whilst I agree that, people standing at the side and writing some fake insurance, the person might actually not be able to pay for a year's insurance in one go. And if that's the only option that they have, then they're going to go with the fake insurance. So I do think that a lot of this is also going to be, like I said, once we have access to real data and real information, and that's why I said even if you're at tier one where you only have access to general market type data, even that I think is going to really make a real difference to the types of products and the type of personalization you can do. You can see the difference between, what the general spending patterns of people were 5 years ago versus today. You may not know that Pamela has spent, just received 2 million naira in her bank account, but you will know that, you'll see general patterns. And I think that's where we're really going to see the difference. I really think it's in personalization.
And transparency. Yeah, there's going to be more transparency. From what you're saying, what I'm picking up is there's going to be a more transparent ecosystem. So I know what you're doing, you know what I'm doing, and it's more obvious. So there's nowhere to hide. But I think that also brings me to something you had mentioned. You talked about in South Africa, it's not compulsory. But earlier on, you said the only way to allow full adoption is to embed it into how the way of life is. So where does regulation come into place now? Because you can't force me to buy insurance. It's not your money. it's not your money. But at some point you can argue that, but it's for your own good, But okay, I don't see it. So
this is an interesting discussion, and it's a little bit like what's happening in the US, where they're saying must children be immunized? In the UK, I think they add calcium to the water. There are different things that you do, and I think that honestly, it's there's no easy answer. There's no right, there's no wrong. But I do think that, like I said, there are certain types of products that call for embedded insurance. They just do. There's some things that you're doing it is in the best interests of the person. It may not be that it's absolutely essential, but it's in their best interest. And I think it's finding that balance that's the thing. But I honestly think that where people see the benefit, where the amount is priced appropriately, so you understand what the person can afford, etc., then I think that, the 1,000 naira.
All right, thank you so much. I'm going to come to you, Yinka. I think during the conversation we talked briefly about distribution. And you said you don't think distribution would be, a problem when it comes to phone banking. So do you see insurers themselves leading distribution? Or is it going to be banks and fintechs that will become the real distributors? Let's say that this scales the way we are projecting it will scale. What would that look like distribution-wise?
Okay, I would say that, it will more or less start from, so it's basically collaboration, right? So I think there's a bank assured, strategy that some banks have adopted where they, their insurance arm have come into their banking product and, sold alongside. Because why I say distribution is not a problem is because almost almost everybody has their banking app. Like their money is very important to them, so everybody has the banking app. So leveraging those existing platforms instead of trying to even build more things on top of it, because not everybody wants to install that next app or add another app to their phone. But if it's on my banking app and I can see it there, it's very easy for me to do that. So collaboration would be what would more or less enhance the distribution, whereby people are not necessarily trying to build new stuff, but looking at what already exists, what is already on people's hands, and then trying to fuse whatever is required there, which is the embedding. So I'm buying a plane ticket. I'm not going somewhere else to go and buy travel insurance, right? I'm going to the hospital. I'm at the hospital. Like hospitals are, because I think today the latest experience is that hospitals are insurance advanced. They don't necessarily want you to run with your HMO as much as possible, pay on the counter. But if at the hospital there, as I'm getting in there, instead of telling me to pay my consulting fee, you're telling me you need to buy health insurance, right? Obviously, at that moment in time, it's actually of benefit to me to actually do that than spending my money and daily bills. So different places, can collaborate, or different institutions can collaborate to ease the distribution along the way.
All right, thank you so much. I'm going to come back to you, Yinka. We've talked a lot about embedding, right? And I want you to give maybe a use case, an example of a product or service today that could embed insurance. Let's say tomorrow they could actually just get up and go and it will work in the Nigerian context.
I honestly think that the opportunity with the telcos is huge. Like I said, with people putting data on their phones and things like that, I actually think the opportunity there is huge because everybody does it. And really, it'll be minute. We're forever changing the pricing anyway. You've gone up from, 2,000 to 2,500 or 1,500 or 500 naira from 300 or whatever it is. And people are absorbing it, let me put it that way. If there's also a value, and if we're talking about, really small amounts, I honestly think that for me would be a game changer. We talk about it all the time. How do you reach all these people? Everybody's using telecoms or the agents or whatever. So I think is really where, and the use case, then you just need to think what is it that that particular person community really requires. Is it life insurance? You can even put life insurance in that category. So I think that there's just different ways, but I think that's probably the easiest way of delivering it. Let me put it that way.
Thank you. Just before we close the session, my next question will be for you, Yinka. We've said a lot about how open banking is going to transform the sector and what it's going to mean. But let's talk about NAICOM. Do you think NAICOM should develop or consider developing an open insurance framework similar to the one we have for open banking? And if that's the case, what should be prioritized?
I would say yes. I think as much as everything is said, transparency is what actually grows any economy, right? If I know what this other person is saying and this other person is saying, and that means that if I was, like Yinka had mentioned, if I was on Answer today and tomorrow I decide, I don't think I like these people again, I want to move to Cornerstone, I should not have to start afresh. Filling those forms are stressful. So imagine if I now have, and then I didn't have the history. So even if I was like a very committed payer across like decades of payments, right? That history does not move along with me the minute I change. So in fact, most people are stuck on providers just because they know that data cannot, move along. So opening the financial the insurance ecosystem rather would actually ease that flow of information. And even for the insurers, right, it would also help you, prevent fraud. Because if someone is blacklisted here, you already would know not to, accept that person when they come to you. So it's for both parties, both the customer and the regulators who both benefit if there is an open insurance platform, right?
Thank you. I think the point about fraud actually stood out because there is so much opportunity for fraud when it comes to insurance, especially, again, in a low trust society, you're going to have so yes, that's a place for collaboration. And before we leave, I want you to, leave our audience with a bold call to action. If you had to say something now to our guests to our audience of insurers, insurtechs, what would that be? So this is for you, Yinka.
I'll keep it short. I would say it's an opportunity. Take it.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I think I will also align with that. Yes, it is. And I would say also, if possible as well, as much as we want to sell, let's also make the claim process more visible. I think people don't know more about that aspect of their insurance. So that should also be a place to prioritize as well.
Okay, so for everyone here, I think we have clear call to action of what to do. So thank you. And on that note, I'd like to thank both Yinka and Unyime for, sharing their insights, joining us on this section. And yes,